at to understand how Azure Site Recovery allows you to ensure application availability with a cloud-based disaster recovery solution. Apart from Azure Site Recovery, I would also like you to take away how Azure as a public cloud is the best cloud for your application availability. So 2 session objectives. First, to understand what does Azure has to offer to you to have your application having the best available solution in Azure. Second, how Azure Site Recovery helps you make your disaster recovery process simple and cost-effective with a cloud-based disaster recovery. I'm Rochik Mittal. I'm the Principal Program Manager for Azure Site Recovery, and I will be joined later by Ashish, one of my colleagues, who will walk you through with some of the cool demos. So let's get started. I've been doing presentations on disaster recovery availability for more than 6 years now. And one thing I always get amazed by the fact how much we think about disasters and disruption and how well prepared we are about it. But actually, when we look into the data, which research shows, it's totally other way around. We come talk about it, but our industries are not ready. And any disruption can have an impact on your business. That leads to your brand impact. And eventually, as IT admins, we are responsible for keeping those applications up and available all the time. It has a direct impact to our careers. And in the world where we are today, where the economy is global, applications are expected to be up and running 24/7, availability is the most important thing. Your application can be hosted here in US, but your clients can be in the Asia Pacific, accessing your application in the night while you are asleep. And your application, if it's not set up for right availability levels and it goes down, your business can have a significant impact and your brand can get lost. Let's also look at what are these causes of disruptions which happens. The most common ones, and which still happens, is the system failures. The machines which are hosting the application goes down. Then the second one is around power failures. Then comes the most common, which we think in the terms of disaster, is the natural disasters, like hurricanes, floods, and other aspects of it. But all of these actually are reasons of disruptions. And the one which is growing their trends these days is the cyber attacks, which is also causing disruptions to your applications. And this is a research by Forrester, which basically talks about all of these disruptions can impact your application. Now, another research on the preparedness of your solutions. The first number, which is 18%, is the number which how much we as disaster recovery owners or business owners feels that we are ready for having a protected environment. How much do we feel that if a disaster is to happen on our site, we have a good solution which will allow us to recover into another region or another location. Second, even if we have a solution, our immature planning and lack of testing causes a problem where people don't understand how to recover it and our application is not recovered. So it's just not your preparedness, but also to be able to plan it and test it on a regular basis, which is important. And all of this is important for 2 reasons. One, to be able to having the compliance requirement based on your business. And second, for your business needs, which needs your business to be up and running. So you do all of these disruption preparation or availability to have a good, compliant, and available solutions. Now, once we have understood what these disruptions are and why we need to prepare, let's look at what Azure has to offer. So Azure provides you, from a SLA perspective, a 99.9 SLA on a single VM. We have architected our data centers, our hardware in such a manner that you have the best availability even on a single VM. But that still leads to a single point of failure for you. That basically means if you're running a single virtual machine, it goes down, then you have a problem where your application is gone down. Then the next construct which we provide is availability set, which allows you to have multiple machines hosted in a data center where we will distribute it across fault domains. Fault domains basically means that they will be distributed on racks which are independent on power and updates. So if something is to happen physically on a particular rack, you have another machine running on another rack. We have recently released another solution which is called availability zones, where you don't just have the rack level availability, but you can have the availability at a data center level. That allows you to be able to have availability even if a data center goes down. And last but not the least, which is the disaster recovery solution, which is purely from a compliance need perspective, protecting you to that last level of disasters as well, where you can replicate using site recovery across the regions and have availability even if something should happen to a particular region. This is primarily for your compliance, but this protects you to all kinds of failures. Now, if you look at all of these 4 solutions and go back and look to the disruption slide which I showed you, pretty much all aspects of your disruptions are covered in each of these categories, starting from system failures, going into the natural disasters, helping you solve the problem. That's the reason we are the best public cloud for your availability solutions. No other public cloud actually has a first-party disaster recovery solution and allows you to be protected even if a region-level disaster is going to happen, something bad is going to happen, your compliance needs are not met by any of those. With setting up the levels of availability, let's go deep into disaster recovery using Azure Site Recovery. I've spoken enough, and today I will do something brave where I will use a real-like application, SAP, and would like to do a real DR drill while we are in the session and see how does that work. So let me go back to my demo machine. So this is a vault, recovery services vault, where we have set up. The machines are already there, they are replicating, and we have something called recovery plan, which is your recovery process. Obviously, before doing this demo, I've tried it enough times so you can see that this has been tested enough. What I'm going to do is trigger a concept called test failover, which is nothing but a DR drill, which will pop up and tell me that my failover direction is from East US 2 to a West US 2. I'm going to go on a latest process point, and I'm going to use my network, which is I've set up for test, and just trigger it. We'll come back to this demo. I've just triggered. My colleague Ashish will come back and show what this recovery plan looks like, what was the application, and show you that this application has actually failed over into a West US environment and up and running. Let's go back and understand what Azure Site Recovery is and how does it work and how simply it is to reach to a stage where the recovery plan was already set up. Just quick show of hands, how many of you have used Azure Site Recovery? Good. About half the class knows about Azure Site Recovery. So we started this journey on Azure Site Recovery about 6 years back with a concept to make DR democratized, make DR simple. And the thing which we learned the most was DR is complex, but it's also very costly. And because of the cost reasons, most of us don't do the DR. And the biggest cost in that particular DR solution is around our recovery site, where we need to plan a recovery site, have the CapEx upfront invested, and keep up those machines ready. Azure Site Recovery was the first solution in this world which started using public cloud. We were the pioneers in this segment where we started using public cloud as the DR site. And today, we have a solution where from Hyper-V, VMware, physical, you can recover into Azure, or you can use Azure infrastructure in itself as a DR site for VMs running in Azure, allowing you to do your both private and public cloud disaster recovery in a simple and consistent manner. All of us going to have heterogeneous environment across private and public cloud, and this is one single solution which meets all your needs and is consistent. So you don't need to learn multiple DR solutions to be able to do this. A lot of our clients also use Azure Site Recovery as a path to the migration into Azure, because migration also requires you to be able to replicate and orchestrate virtual machines into the target site. So that's the reason Azure Site Recovery is both in the migration and disaster recovery domain. Let's quickly look into what are some of the key capabilities Azure Site Recovery provides. It provides you an automated protection and replication with a continuous log-based replication. Due to this continuous log-based replication, you get best-in-class RPO and RTOs. The second most important feature is about to be able to do your DR drill, which is required for your compliance without having any impact to your production systems. That's another reason why Azure Site Recovery is very important, because it allows you to do a test failover, which I just triggered, without having any impact to your production site. Your application is still up and running. Customers can connect it. You can bring up your DR environment into an isolated environment, test your application, and gain the compliance confidence that your DR drill will happen. And if something has to happen, you will be able to do DR. This also works as an evidence for your compliance reports to be able to say that you have been doing DR drills on a regular basis. Another set of features are around recovery plan, which is an orchestrated recovery across an application, because we all own the application. So individual VMs is not important enough. If the application is not able to come up, VM coming up is just a piece of the puzzle. So that's the reason we have a single recovery plan which can do a complete orchestration to be able to bring your application up and running. Now, any solution is not complete enough without a centralized monitoring and analytic, so that you can have that peace of mind that once I've set up, things are working fine, and I don't need to go and constantly check on it. That's the reason we have invested significantly on centralized monitoring, and also a failback support, so that you can come back to the same region or site where you started from, because you chose that region or site for a particular reason. That could be your client's closeness or your application requirement. So you want to be coming back to the same site rather than having a one-way street. That's the reason we have a complete failback support. Another information I would like to share is this map. We all are globally situated, and Azure Site Recovery and Azure regions are globally. So you can choose any of the Azure region and use Azure Site Recovery and meet your client's compliance requirement so that you can send the data in that particular region. We expand this as and when new regions are evolved, so we will always be available in a region near you. With that, let's go deep into some demos and look into the scenarios of Azure to Azure and try to set up that environment right here, right now. And this is a service which we did GA in June 2018, just 3 months back, and already have thousands of customers using it with thousands of VMs protected, and doing a regular compliance drills and meeting those compliance requirements. Before I get into the demo, one of the questions which I usually get asked is, which is related to the availability aspect of it, that Azure is an available environment. Why do I need to invest in DR? And you have heard me talk about compliance, compliance, compliance so many times, but I'm going to talk it about maybe 5 more times in this presentation, because that's the reason you buy DR. It's your compliance requirement. If you're a manufacturing segment, insurance segment, finance segment, hospital segments, you have those compliance requirements where your application and data is so critical that they need to be available across all the disruptions. And compliance leads to the second requirement, which is around DR drills. That's the second requirement. And third and fourth requirement are when the actual disaster happened to be able to fail over, and once recovered from a disaster to be able to fail back. This is nothing different from what you would do for an on-site or what you do from an IS, because the application is what is required for the DR. It's not based on where that application is hosted. The compliance requirement of the application does not change if you move into the cloud or move it into a private cloud or a hosted cloud. With this, let's jump to another demo. And this is my Azure portal. And what I'm going to do is I'm going and connecting to a virtual machine and trying to show you how simple it is to set up Azure Site Recovery. you can see that all the operations are available on the left nav of a compute VM, and one of that option is disaster recovery. When you click this disaster recovery operation, what's happening in the background is we are going and reading your source configuration, which region you are deployed in, whether you have a availability set, what is your network, what storage are you using, and many other settings. The concept behind that is when you build your first application, you have planned it, and your DR site needs to look identical to it. Now, being in Azure, we have that capability. We can create an identical environment for you rather than you going and planning and setting up yourself. So we provide this capability where, based on your source information, we allow you to choose best possible region, all the configurations by default, and if you like to choose any other region, let's say I want to go for an East US, I can choose that region. And all the settings are by default populated. The graph below shows you for your source region what are the available regions where you can replicate to. And we have even put the intelligence based on the latencies, which is based on our own Azure network fibers, where you can replicate and meet the RPO in minutes. So you don't even need to think, how do I need to provision my network or what kind of RPO RTOs I will get, and we provide you all of these capabilities. All you need to do is, if you trust this planning, you just hit an enable replication button, or if you want to do your own planning and change, that's also possible to be able to do. But for this demo, I'm just going to hit enable replication button. In the background, we are going and provisioning all of your DR environment, completely from AV set, network, and other aspects of it, as well as starts the replication of the VMs. So for a VM, within a minute, you can actually be done with setting up the DR. Let's go back to the presentation and touch base on the key highlights of this solution. The first highlight of this solution is being cost effective. The cost effective comes from both aspects. Most of the DR solution asks you to set up a lot of infrastructure, but we saw there is no infrastructure needs to be prepared. Azure has all the infrastructure already available for you to be able to do this. Second is you have to pay for the CapEx and OpEx on the other side. But in this solution, you are only going to pay for what you're using. We are going to replicate your data and keep the data available on the target site, but there is no virtual machine running. There is no capacity which is being charged to you, but we have done our internal planning to make sure that the capacity is available when you need it. So you are not doing any costs for it and only paying for what you are getting used. And I will have a pricing slide to explain it in more detail later point of time to help you understand what does that mean. The second capability is around simplicity. We just did one click to set up the replication and one click to fail over our application. So the overall DR process becomes very simple for you to be able to do this. And third, again, my favorite point, compliance. You can do the DR drill testing, you can meet your RPO, RTO requirements, and have the centralized monitoring and alerting. While that VM is getting protected, let me also talk about in the last 3 months since the general availability of this service, what we have been working on. And all of these points are based on what we have been hearing from you guys. The first feature which I'm announcing here is cross-subscription DR. A lot of companies want their DR and production environments in different subscription, both from manageability perspective as well as from a cost perspective. This cross-subscription DR capability allows you to choose a different subscription as your DR subscription, and based on your region choose, you can replicate into that particular region. Second capability is around DR for encrypted VM. Most of you should be aware of Azure Disk Encryption, which is the secure way of creating your VM and keeping your VM encrypted. A lot of enterprises, especially in the financial domains, are adopting this, and to be able to have a DR capability of that is very key for them. So we are announcing today the DR capability of encrypted VM. I'm also announcing a preview capability, which is VM hosted in availability zones can also be DR'd into another region. And we will understand your HA requirement, how your application has been configured for HA using availability zones, and replicate that into the other side. This feature is now in preview and will be available for general public by end of the calendar year. Let's take a look at each of these features in action. I'm going to go back to my machine and this time choose a different VM, which is Contoso Web 2. This is actually an encrypted VM which we have. And if I go back to the same disaster recovery tab, I can see that this time it has been identified as an encrypted VM, and the key vaults have been identified as well, as the key is also identified, and we are allowing you to auto-create those keys as well. The first tab, which is the subscription tabs, allows you to choose a different subscription than your source subscription itself. So this is how the same capability, the same simple experience, you can do the cross-subscription DR as well as the encrypted VM, and we will do the encrypted keys transfer for you as well. Now, if you want to be more secure and have the complete key management with you, you can also replicate the keys on yourself. We provide a scripting way to do that, and just provide us the key vaults where you have replicated the keys and make it available. For the preview feature, I'm going to go into another portal, which is my preview portal, and go and connect to another VM. Same experience, going into the disaster recovery feature. And this time, this will detect that this VM has been configured for high availability across availability zones, and it will showcase you the capability of same availability zones available here, whether you want to do it across single instance, availability sets, or availability zones. So let's go back to our presentation here. Let's quickly look at the architecture, what's happening underneath, so that you understand this more easily. So for a single VM, you are connected, you are inside an availability set, inside a VNet, you have your keys and vaults available, you are having your disk as a managed disk. When you do an enable replication, we actually provision the target site environment, including availability sets, VNet, keys, as well as the managed disk, and send an initial replication, which is your initial snapshot of your disk, to the target site disk to seed the disk here. As part of this enable replication, we also push an extension inside your VM, which will start tracking any future changes and send it to a source cache storage account in the source region. The reason behind using the source region is to be able to have capability where your delta replications are happening nearby and not impacting your production workloads. When a disaster is to happen, the application is being shut down and brought up into the target region, and all the configuration which is stored with Azure Site Recovery, it's connected with that and brought up completely in a functional manner. To summarize, we can choose the region of our own choice. You're not bounded by the region pair. You can auto-create properties based on your source configuration, like AV set, storage account, and other aspects which we have looked into. You have a full OS configurations across Linux and Windows. So this solution works across variety of operating systems so that you can have the full management. And last, we also manage your replication and auto update if there is a new release being released by us, your machines. So you don't need to even actually do a regular update from an ASR perspective for these machines. And you are set up for auto upgrade for extensions. Now let's go back and try to see how do I recover that virtual machines which I have protected. So I'm going to choose another machine which has been protected and replicated, and go back to the same disaster recovery tab where I set it up. But this time, instead of creating what that setup is, it will actually show you how your machine has been replicating, including the RPO. You can see this machine's got an RPO of 16 seconds. And usually it's in that order of seconds and minutes where you will get an RPO across region, because we have a very fat pipe where the data can easily go without any throttling. You can also see what are your recovery points right in there. both crash consistent and app consistent points. You are getting an app consistency as well within this particular solution. The same graph is seen to tell you visually where this is getting replicated into. Now, if you like to do a DR drill for this VM, you can do it right there by just single clicking. Like we did for the recovery plan, you can do it at a VM level if you just want to manage a single VM and choose the same properties. Or you can go to the recovery vault right from here. When you land into recovery vault, you can get a complete picture of your recovery vault from this dashboard, which is the centralized monitoring, from a perspective of replication health, even your failover health, as well as if there are any configuration issues in the environment. And if you have created a recovery plan, you can go and see this recovery plan right here. So I'm going to go from here and connect to a virtual machine and see what it is. Here you can see I have a protected SLS machine and a Windows machine. And if I click on it, I get the same experience, which is around the VM protection view, which we were seeing from the IaaS blade. Now, if you want to manage any further properties around how I configure the IP where the machine needs to get configured into, or I want to change back some of those settings which I have set up at the time of DR, you can go into this Compute and Network tab and easily manage those settings for your application. A lot of applications have this requirement that I want to have the same IP, the same static IP, or some application requires to have a different IP. All of those IP managements can also be done right here in this portal. And what we will do is we will reserve the IP for you in that target region, and when you fail over, that IP is assigned to this VM. And it's always going to happen in the same manner so that you can get the same IP which you require. Now, in the Azure environment, you also have this advantage because it's all virtualized network. You can get the same IPs as well. If you are connecting back to your environment, you will require a VPN, and at that point of time, your DNS servers needs to be updated either based on the new IP, or you have to do a full subnet failover to make sure that the IPs are retained and connections are being met. So let's go back to the presentation and try to summarize what we have seen so far. We have seen best-in-class RPO. We saw RPO in seconds. Typically, it's RPO in minutes. We saw application and crash-consistent recovery points, which is for the last 3 days, so that you can choose a recovery point where you want to do a failover to and bring up the virtual machines accordingly. You can have the network configurations where you have the virtual network and IP configurations for the same. And you can have a one-click recovery. With this, I would like to bring up my colleague Ashish on stage and go back to the demo which we were showing earlier around the recovery plan of a SAP and try to showcase you how does that application recovery works. Ashish.
Check. Okay. Sorry.
We will take the questions towards the end. Let's complete the session.
Okay, cool. Hey guys, I'm Ashish. I'm program manager on same engineering team. I've been part of this team since incubation, but that's the boring part. The cool part is what I'm going to show you. So we're going to see how you can use ASR to recover your SAP application over there. So Rochak has shown in the initial slide how easy it is to protect your virtual machines with a single click, how easy it is to test failover those virtual machines. But we all know that enterprise applications is not about 1 or 2 virtual machines. It's about a lot of virtual machines, and you require a disaster recovery solution which can actually fail over your virtual machines in right order, keeping the data consistency intact. With that, for this demo, we have used SAP application. So let me show you. Okay, let me show you the demo topology over here. So this is the demo topology of SAP application. If you see over here, we are using SAP NetWeaver deployment with SQL database. So I have 2 virtual machines as a part of a web tier, where I have SAP dialog instances and web dispatches installed in a highly available bay around an availability set with a load balancer attached. If you go down further, you will see there is an application tier, which is also called SAP Central Services. That is also a very important and critical piece of a SAP application, and also most of the time called single point of failure. This is deployed across 2 Windows 2016 server with guest failover clustering. within an availability set. If you go down, you will see we have a SQL database here with SQL always on. So for these kind of deployment, what kind of recommendation we have on what we have done over here in this demo is to, I forgot that we have an Active Directory also over here. So you have to have a site-to-site VPN between source region and target region. And for database tier, we recommend use SQL always on replication. For AD, use AD replication. And for rest of the tier, you can use ASR to replicate all your virtual machines. So in even of a disaster or a DR drill, you can orchestrate the failover, and all these virtual machines will come up in the target Azure region. Now I'm going to take a pause here and I'll say, so that you can grasp this slide, we also have a detailed recommendation of SAP S/4HANA disaster recovery. You can go and check out a link after this session. You can download this deck. And you might be thinking that we have been talking about that ASR is very simple and we are using multiple replication technology over here, but we still hold our promise that you can orchestrate the failover of all these VMs over here with a single click using ASR recovery plan. So let me go to the ASR recovery plan and let me show you how it can be done. Okay. So I'm going and, okay, the recovery plan was already open over there. Let's go to the recovery plan again. So if you can see, this is a SAP recovery plan. I'm going to drill it down and I want to show you what this looks like for an application like this. So if you see over here, we have a multiple grouping over here. So group is a construct in ASR recovery plan, which means you can add as many VMs you want in a group, and ASR will make sure that all those VMs which are part of a group will fail over in parallel. Additionally, the application like this require the sequencing also. So you want your DB tier to fail over first, followed by an application tier and web tier. So if you see over here, I have multiple groups. So the sequencing can be achieved when you have more than one groups depending upon the application tiers. You can also see over here that we have scripts which we have used for this application. So I have two scripts over here, one for failing over SQL availability group, the other one is for load balancer. So there was one gentleman who came by our booth and he was asking, can they automate certain things and can they invoke the script from ASR? Yes, they can do that, and this is where you can do. So we have a first-class integration with the automation account for that. So this is how a recovery plan looks like. Having said that, let's go back to a test failover job which Rochak triggered at the start of this presentation and see what the status of the job is. So I'm going back to the site recovery vault. Let me go and drill down to the job. So I'm checking site recovery jobs over here. There are multiple jobs, as you have seen, that we have tried it multiple times. So this is the last test failover which was triggered by Rochak. Let me show it to you how the job status looks like. We have seen that the recovery plan had multiple groups and the scripts. So if you see over here, the VMs have actually failed over as a part of a group. It also, the automation script also got triggered and the load balancer also got attached to the VMs. Having said that, also we should also want to see how much time it actually took for this application to fail over. So if you see over here, 8 minutes 29 seconds is the time which took for this application to fail over from one region to another region. Let me go and check the VM status, whether those VMs are running or not. So I'm going to the VM list view. So this is the VM list view. I have named all my virtual machines. So I'm searching the VMs. Let me sort it in terms of location. So if you see, all my SAP VMs, source virtual machines are deployed in East US 2 region. and all my test failover VMs should come up in another region, which is West US 2. So you can see the test failover VM has actually come up, and they are running in West US 2 region, and they are healthy. Having said that, we also want to see actually the application is working or not. So for that, I will actually go to the jump box in West US 2 and will try to connect to my SAP deployment. So I'm getting inside the jump box. So it's connecting to West US 2 cloud service. So what I'm going to show over here is that we actually did the test failover drill in an isolated network, and we're going to try it out without impacting anything to our production environment. So I'm going to click on a SAP logon. So it will actually try to connect to the web dispatcher tier, which internally will try to connect to the application tiers and take data from the database tier. So for this to work, and actually the application is working, we will see whether we are able to get the username password prompt or not. So let me connect to it. Selecting and trying to log on. So voila, it is working. So we have seen that within 8 minutes, we are able to actually fail over from East US 2 region to West US 2 region. And an application like SAP, you can do the DR drill within 8.29 seconds. Having said that, with this, I'm going to ask Rochak again to talk about pricing.
Thank you, Ashish. I hope you guys enjoyed having a real application failover while sitting in this session, and also being able to set up this environment while we are. Now, we all understand DR is not just this. DR is a lot more about connectivity, being able to do connections, set up how your client's going to access. But even this part, which we have showcased you, in earlier years, this would have been a multiple days project, where one, you are needing so much infrastructure and setup to be able to set up the environment. And second, there is no simple way to be able to recover an application like SAP. And third, which is around the quality of Azure, which allows you to bring up these virtual machines in such a quick manner that you have multiple machines in a group coming up in less than 10 minutes. So with that, I'm going to go and talk about a little bit, because this is one of the common questions we get. How does the pricing work for it? Now, as I was saying, there is no pricing which is done for the virtual machines being replicated on the other side, or no compute is being charged. We charge a management fee for Azure Site Recovery, which is the licensing cost. And the cost which I've written is just what the list price is. Then you also get charged for the network egress. You're not provisioning the network, but you're consuming the network to sending the data from one region to another region. And there also, we have built in our own compression, which on a lowest workload gives you a 50% compression to a best case of 80 to 85% compression, helping you reduce your costs significantly. Typically, you will get the similar storage cost because you are keeping the same image or the data available on the other side, because that's the only thing we are having being used on the recovery side. Now, and as Ashish showed, on the compute side, there are some workloads you may run, like AD and SQL, based on AD and SQL replication. For that, you will pay the compute charges. But anything which you are replicating through Azure Site Recovery, there is going to be no compute cost. Now, when you do a DR drill, like we did right now, or when you're going to do an actual failover, at that point of time, these applications will come up, and you will be only charged for the period where things are working or running in Azure. Overall, making this very cost-effective solution. Again, I talked about compliance enough. Is it important to us as well, right? Azure does so much compliance as an overall infrastructure, but even for our service, because our service is going to be used by companies which needs HIPAA compliance, companies who need SOC compliance. So we, on a regular basis, keeps updating all our compliance requirement. You can find all the detailed information around our compliance in this particular Trust Center site, but we ourselves treat our compliance very important, because we are in a business which requires you to be having a fully compliant solutions. To summarize the session, this is what we learned today, right? Azure Site Recovery for ISVM is a no-DR infrastructure, automated protection and replication, best-in-class RPO RTOs, no-impact DR drill, centralized monitoring, orchestrated recovery plan, and failback support. I just want to take this slide as your summary slide from the learning of this session. There are a bunch of resources which are available in our documentation, blogs, and even user voice to help us improve this feature. So feel free to reach out to us if you have any of these questions, and we will be happy to help. There are a bunch of other sessions which are going across in this domain of security and management. One of the key ones, which is we would like you to join if you're interested in this technology, is today when a customer is deploying it at scale, what are those evidences and what are their learnings? So I'm going to be co-presenting this session with the folks who have real-world examples and experience on this, implementing at a client side, and share the learnings on both Azure Site Recovery and Azure Backup at scale deployments, challenges, and solutions. So please join us tomorrow, Thursday, 2:15, for this particular session. With that, you have been a wonderful audience. I know I've been keeping you away from your lunch, so we'll try to wrap up the session and let you guys go for this lunch. I'm going to be around if you have any questions. Thank you.